What's the best way to tackle homelessness? Give the homeless buckets of cash. What could go wrong? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Everybody these days is panicking over what to do about America's homelessness crisis. People are identifying different causes and resorting to all sorts of outlandish solutions with varying levels of success. Many progressives like to emphasize how high housing costs drive levels of homelessness. That's why many states, like California, have been funding small homes to combat homelessness. Meanwhile, other states have been looking to Medicaid-funded housing as a solution. The problem is building houses takes a lot of time and resources. Yes, The Sims lied to us. You can't just point and click and suddenly you have your own mansion. That makes me mad enough to want to stick them in the pool and then remove the ladder. In California's case, to absolutely no one's surprise, building homes for the homeless requires a lot of time and enormous amounts of money. For example, LA was paying $600,000 per unit to house homeless people in 2022, and even over $800,000 to house a single homeless person. More money is being burned in California than trees are burned in, well, California. So what's the cheaper alternative? Just give out cash. Now you might be thinking, that's a plan doomed to fail, especially if the person you give money to ends up blowing it on vices like drugs and alcohol. But according to progressives, you're just being prejudiced by negative stereotypes. Way to just assume that person passed out on the street with a needle in his arm is on heroin. Maybe he's a diabetic and he just got sleepy while injecting his insulin, you bigot. Proponents for giving out cash argue that the vast majority of homeless people are not scammers. They're just homeless people trying to make it through another day. Hey, who said they were scammers? I think the accusation was that they were hopeless addicts. A person can have the best of intentions and still be a hopeless addict. But as The Guardian points out, people are homeless for lots of reasons. Fleeing domestic violence or sexual abuse, loss of a job and a partner, often at the same time, leaving the care system with scant resources, and being severely mental ill, to name a few. That's why they say it's okay to give money to homeless people.
But there are times when giving a few dollars directly to an individual can be the difference between life and death. The only support most homeless people receive is food stamps, but they aren't enough. So a few dollars can really make a difference. Did you know that food stamps can't be used for things like toothpaste or toilet paper? Tampons, soap, aspirin, anything on that grocery store aisle that isn't food requires cold, hard cash. Meanwhile, a growing number of shelters now charge for an overnight stay.
Okay, yes, it's fine to give money to homeless people. It's called charity. What we're talking about is the government forcibly taking our money through taxes and redistributing it in very dumb ways, especially when it might enable substance abuse. But as some are saying, who are you to judge what they do with that cash? So let the wealth redistribution commence. There are studies that show it works. Remember, trust the studies, trust the experts. One of these studies is an experiment conducted by the Foundations for Social Change, a Vancouver-based charitable organization, and the University of British Columbia, which concluded that unconditional cash transfers reduce homelessness. Indeed, as the BBC was more than happy to report, the CEO of Foundations for Social Change called the results beautifully surprising. Beautifully surprising. Just like when your friend asks you to smell their finger and it smells like lavender. Now that's refreshing. Many media outlets say this study debunked and defied stereotypes of homeless people's spending habits. And I gotta say, it's awesome seeing people defy stereotypes. Like seeing a liberal that loves guns, or a sober person from Milwaukee. That's not the only study news outlets have pointed to. Many also point to the Denver Basic Income Project, done in partnership with the University of Denver. There are reports about how the project reduced homelessness and increased full-time employment. Many found its reported success encouraging, which is why the Denver experiment won unanimous city council support for $4 million in funding to continue. Wow, good thing all that cash just appeared out of thin air. So is it settled? Should we now be implementing cash handouts to the homeless at scale? Well, hold your horses, because there's a fundamental flaw in both of those experiments. I'll tell you what it is right after the break. Welcome back. Proponents for cash handouts to the homeless say the evidence is clear. It works. But Is that really the case? Well, it turns out the studies that support the model have a few flaws. Let's first look at the study conducted by the Foundations for Social Change in the University of British Columbia. It was a year-long experiment that took place in 2018, although the results only came out this year. The researchers reported that they provided a one-time unconditional cash transfer of $7,500 Canadian to 50 homeless people and compared their outcomes to 65 homeless people who didn't receive anything. They found that over 1 year, cash recipients spent fewer days homeless, increased savings, and spending with no increase in temptation goods spending on drugs and alcohol, and generated societal net savings of $777 per recipient via reduced time in shelters, which is impressive. For some people I know who aren't homeless, you give them $7,500 and they're going to go to Vegas and come back with negative $92,000. Best bachelor party ever. But despite the study's title, the cash grant wasn't unconditional. The entire research process was designed to make cash handouts to the homeless appear as successful as possible and look squeaky clean. First, researchers wanted to make sure recipients didn't fear losing social benefits because of the cash handouts. So they established an agreement with the British Columbia provincial government to ensure the cash transfers didn't impact existing or future benefits. Secondly, remember the 115 homeless people in the study? Well, they weren't just randomly recruited from the streets. They were selected from a much larger pool. Researchers screened 732 participants from 22 shelters from 4 shelter organizations across Metro Vancouver. They were interviewing people with tragic backstories competing to be on a program. Is this a social experiment or America's Got Talent? They had to meet certain criteria to qualify for the experiment. Researchers excluded those who were not between 19 and 65 years of age, those who had been homeless for more than 2 years, and those who were not legal residents. They also excluded those with high levels of substance and alcohol abuse, as well as mental health symptoms. It's almost as if they were trying to weed out certain candidates, specifically the ones who go, "Did somebody just say weed?" Spoiler alert, they were. And they were very open about it, saying the screening criteria were used to reduce any potential risks of harm, example overdose, from the cash transfer. Wow! To disprove the stereotype that homeless people would use cash handouts for substance abuse, they excluded those who would use cash handouts for substance abuse. What an effective way to prove that cash handouts to the homeless work! But don't worry, those kinds of people don't make up the majority of the homeless, right? Well, the number of people rejected sure make it easy to conclude otherwise. Of the 732 participants, 229 passed all criteria. Keep in mind that the people answering the survey questions didn't know that their answers would determine whether they'd receive $7,500. Had they known that, who knows how many would have self-reported accurately. And to make matters worse, researchers lost contact with almost half of those, leaving them with only 115 participants. I can't believe it. Aliens abducted half of the participants? That's the only explanation, right? Right? The study concluded that unconditional cash transfers reduce homelessness, but that was only with those who met the criteria and didn't disappear on researchers. Chances are that everyone who flew under the radar would have changed the results. But hey, a 50% success rate is great as a batting average, so it's probably also great for handing out cash, right? Right? It really doesn't seem like researchers were asking for a real pool of homeless people to work with. They pretty much rigged the entire research to ensure the highest likelihood of success, which became obvious when one of the authors of that study told Vox that if there was null effect from people receiving the cash, from an investigator perspective, it could be seen as a waste of money because it didn't actually demonstrate impact in somebody's life. In other words, if the experiment failed, the people funding the research would be unhappy, so they had to make sure the experiment succeeded. Yep, that's exactly how science is supposed to work. Well, I guess they're at least in good company. The Denver Basic Income Project used similar techniques. It started last year with no strings attached cash payments to around 800 homeless people. The 800 people were divided into 3 groups. The first group received $1,000 per month. The second group received $6,500 up front and $500 per month afterwards, and the third group received $50 per month. $50 a month? With current inflation, you couldn't even get a dollhouse with that much money. 6 months later, the percent of recipients who report living in a home they own or rent increased substantially, and the percent of those who reported sleeping outside decreased during that same time period. There was also an increase in employment for the groups with larger cash payments, though the employment level for those who received just $50 a month remained the same. Probably because you're not going to ace a job interview in a suit that costs only $50. Thanks, Goodwill. This project was also heralded as proof that giving cash to the homeless is a winning formula. According to one MSNBC opinion piece, while American conservatives prefer to attach conditions and strict supervision to financial assistance, experiments with unconditional cash transfers, like the one in Denver, can counter the knee-jerk assumption that people with limited resources can't be trusted to help themselves. But the researchers' own report shows that there were quite a lot of conditions that made the unconditional cash transfers work. Like the study I mentioned earlier, the Denver project didn't randomly select participants. The Denver Basic Income Project participants were recruited through homelessness service providing agencies in Denver. They also cherry-picked those who could participate with strict criteria. The criteria included requiring participants to be accessing services from one of the partner agencies in addition to not having severe and unaddressed mental health or substance use needs. The fact that there are strict guidelines just goes to show that the people running the experiments know that the cash can be abused. Yet people are still applauding the studies for debunking and defying stereotypes. You can get whatever result you want in an experiment when you put that many conditions on it. This is like saying that your Chihuahua can win a race at a dog track, assuming all the dogs it's racing against are blind pugs. Given how real data on the effectiveness of cash handouts is very limited, it's really hard to say if it would work at scale or if it's even financially feasible in the long run. But don't worry, since when have cash handouts ever gone to waste? They burn more cash than California burned trees. But if you want to counter homelessness in a real way, then consider supporting America Uncovered on Patreon by clicking that orange button. It'll keep me and our staff off the streets. And if you want to learn more about plans that involve cash handouts to everyone, then click on this video about UBI. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.